Salutations! Welcome to Prog Chattery 777. Well, we're continuing our discussion of Kate Bush music. We've made it to the year 1993. This is The Red Shoes. I do not have it on vinyl, so you'll have to deal with the glare of my jewel case. Yeah, quite an interesting album. When I first discovered Kate's music, it was a very short span of time, and I ended up collecting her entire studio output within, just a couple of months. And I was very quick to say that this is my least favorite of her albums, but having reevaluated it for this chat, I think this is actually a little bit better than the Sensual World. Actually, I think the songs on here are probably better than the Sensual World. It is very dark. It is very melancholy. I think that has to do with what was going on in her life at the time, at least from what I've read. I know around the recording of this album, her mother had passed away. There's a couple other friends of hers that had passed away, a guitar player. She had broken up with Del Palmer, who she'd been in a long-term relationship with, but they were still working together on the album. He was the bass player. I think all this tumultuous stuff had an effect on the album. And, again, it might be another reason why I never really liked it before, is I found some of the songs to be kind of depressing. But, at the end of the day, it is Kate Bush music, and it is, it's got a positive message to it at the end of the day. So yeah, similarly to The Sensual World, I think there are some production issues with it. It's funny, for both Sensual World and Red Shoes, I think she was really trying to go for an organic band sound, which is totally unlike what she was doing in the early 80s, Now that may have been a commercial move, or maybe that was just, what she was interested in at the time. But, Sensual World and Red Shoes don't have nearly the same degree of experimentation that was displayed on The Dreaming and Hounds of Love. But that's not a bad thing, music doesn't need to be experimental and weird to be good, obviously. So yeah, again, I wonder, is this organic approach, is it supposed to be a commercial thing, or is that just what she's interested in? And of course, the great irony is that, her trying to get the organic sound of a band for these two albums, and it's Sensual World and Red Shoes that I think are the most dated. They sound, like they're from the 80s. And a lot of people would probably say that Hounds of Love is that, but it doesn't sound dated to me. Hounds of Love still sounds, current to my ears anyway. Maybe I'm crazy. But yeah, obviously in 2011 she released an album called Director's Cut, which was had bits and pieces from Sensual World and the Red Shoes, like the best bits, the best songs from those two albums, and essentially re-recorded them and updated them. She took the backing tracks and basically reproduced them. I'll talk more about that because I am going to talk about Director's Cut eventually. But the fact that she addressed the fact that there is dodgy production on these albums, I think is really good, and it shows that she cares about the music and she wants to make sure that the songs are going to be given their best possible representation. Blah 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 blah. Let's talk about the songs. The album opens with Rubberband Girl, which is it kind of stands out on the album. It's not really, it doesn't really prepare you for what's to come, really. It's a very upbeat, bouncy, fun kind of a number. And it doesn't have the same level of melancholy or drama that the rest of the album has. And it's funny, this is how I feel about Rubberband Girl is kind of like how I felt about the whole album. When I first heard it, I thought, oh my gosh, it's so blatantly poppy and bouncy, and I found it kind of crass, and I didn't really like it. But over time, I've come to appreciate how good a song it really is. It has a tremendous hook, I could learn to twang like a rubber band. That's a wonderful hook, and just very well put together structurally, and it's a great song. Some great sax that pops up in the mix. I think there's a great vocal performance, particularly towards the end when she starts going kind of crazy and the rubber band sound. And towards the end too, we get some really fast guitar licks. I'm not really sure who that is. There's a lot of big musicians on this album, that's worth noting. But those fast guitar licks are just wonderful. Really cool. Of course, Rubberband Girl was re-recorded for the director's cut, and is very, very different on that album, but we'll talk about that when we come to it. Track 2, And So Is Love. This is more typical of the album, more dark, more gloomy, more moody. I get a real Peter Gabriel vibe from this song in particular. There's a lot you can compare, I think, but actually, The Red Shoes and Us by Peter Gabriel, I think there's some definite comparisons. But yeah, it sets things up with a cool kind of bass line. There's a weird synth that's kind of got this whistly sound to it. Eric Clapton, his guitar player, throws some bluesy, Clapton-y licks, which is fine. And lyrically, you know, again, the version on The Red Shoes, the album, is quite, it's very bleak. You know, the whole hook, the main chorus is, you know, life is sad and so is love. Of course, this song was re-recorded as well for director's cut, and she changed that lyric. Life is sweet and so is love. So obviously she was in a different mindset in the early 90s as she was in the early 2010s. But it is a good song. It is a good song. Not one of my favorites, but it's good. Track 3 is Eat the Music. This might be one of the more forgettable songs on the album. It's got a very upbeat vibe to it. It's got the sound of you know, it sounds like islands, like the Caribbean. Not stylistically. I mean, it's not like reggae or anything like that. It's not Latin music, but the imagery is very islandy to me. Not too sure specifically what it's about. I think there's kind of like a food, sexual thing going on. I have absolutely no idea, to be honest. Not one of my favorites on the album, you know, but it's there and it's nice. It's okay. Track 4, one of the best songs on the album, and one of Kate's best songs, I think, is "Moments of Pleasure." This is, you know, this is classic Kate. We have all that emotional intelligence and whatnot that she's so well, you know, she's so good at conjuring those kind of feelings out. And it's a tribute to the people who had passed away. And you know, in a way, you could say it's a mourning song. It's about mourning and acknowledging that people have passed. But there's something very uplifting about Moments of Pleasure, I think. You know, its whole idea is, you know, we need to cherish the moments that you know, the moments, the memories that we have, that we've shared with people that have passed on. You know, that's a gift. That memory is a gift, and it's to be treasured. It's got a great line. It's something I guess our mother used to say: every old sock meets an old shoe. And that's really, really sweet. The very end, you know, she says hey, and then there's a name, and you know, a little line to go along with whoever that person might be. It's also a reference to Bill, the lighting man who she sang about on Never Forever, the song For Bill. So that's kind of interesting. Kind of ties everything all up. Again, Moments of Pleasure was re-recorded for director's cut, and I think the director's cut version is much, much better. Little bit overproduced on this album, but it's still a great song. Still beautiful, beautiful song. Track 5, The Song of Solomon. Another song re-recorded for director's cut, and this is a really, really good one. Very, very low key. It's not a big loud song. It is slow, quiet, and brooding, and it is a sexy, sexy song. Obviously, it's about the Song of Solomon, and to explain that in absolute layman's terms, my understanding of it is, you know, the man trying to express his love for a woman with words, and the woman doesn't want that bullshit. She wants the physical end of things. So it's a very sexy song, very, very sexy song. Yeah, I'm a big fan. Again, like most of the songs that were re-recorded for director's cut, the director's cut version is much, much better. Moving on, track 6 is Lily. One of my favorite Kate Bush songs, actually. But I find it difficult listening to the version on here. There's two other versions that we have now. There's the director's cut version of Lily, and there is also a version on Before the Dawn. And both more current versions of Lily, I think, are far superior. And it's, like I said, my problem with the studio version is that it's overproduced and there's no dynamics. You know, when she re-recorded for director's cut, obviously we'll talk about that when I talk about director's cut. She gives the song much more space and much more room to breathe, and yeah, it's just great. The very very incessant bass line. I love the drama to the vocals. Protect yourself with fire. That is just wicked. Yeah, really, really good song. The opening of it, it's got that little piece of poetry that's recited, which is quite cool and proggy and mysterious. And of course, before the dawn, she opened the whole concert with Lily, which I think is a tremendous opener. Really, really good. The drums are a little bit stiff. I'm not sure if it's a drum machine or if it's an actual drummer. Again, director's cut version's got Steve Gadd on it, so anything with Steve Gadd is amazing. I'm going to talk more about Lily in that video. Moving on, I think this is where we would have flipped the side had this been vinyl. But we got track 7 of the CD, which is the title track, "The Red Shoes." Really, 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 really like this song. Literally, it's about putting on these red shoes and you can't stop dancing because the shoes have a mind of their own, or something along those lines. Anyway, but the way that I've always looked at the song, like I should mention too, musically it's got classic kind of Celtic pagan thing that she does, kind of like Jig of Life from Hounds of Love. I like the Red Shoes more than Jig of Life though. I really really like Red Shoes. But the song to me has got a deeper resonance with me beyond what the song is literally about. When I some years ago, I took a trip to the UK. I took a trip to Cornwall, in fact, and my family lives there. And it was my first time traveling outside of Canada by myself. It was a big, exciting time. You know, a week just out there adventuring and meeting my family and all that kind of stuff. And I remember the weeks leading up to my departure, I was listening to a lot of Kate Bush, and the Red Shoes. There's so many lines in there that just capture how I was feeling in that moment. You know. Oh, it's gonna be the way you always thought it would be, but it's gonna be really happening to you. And again, just a tremendous vocal performance. Yeah, it is. I've got some very very good personal connotations with the Red Shoes. The song was also re-recorded for director's cut. Although interestingly, I actually like the original version more. It's the one case on this album where I like the original recording more than the director's cut version. So that's interesting. Moving on, track 8, "Top of the City." This is another very famous song by Kate. It was, again, we've got 2 other versions of this. This was performed during Before the Dawn, and it was also re-recorded for director's cut. And again, both versions from those other albums are far superior. This is probably one of the saddest songs on the album, actually. I'm not sure specifically what it's about. You know, you could just say, you know, girl wants to climb to the top of the city. But I think it's about, you know, the reaching a state where you're so desperate to just escape. And, you know, I think I've read somewhere, some people think that it's about a suicide, or a suicide attempt. And it might be, but I try not to read too deeply into a lot of the lines. But there is a definite sadness, you know. It could be a breakup song, you know, whatever it is. It's about trying to escape something that you can't deal with anymore, I think. But yeah, it is a beautiful piece. The big dynamic sections, the ooh ah, that part on this album, the ooh ah part on the original version, I find difficult because the drums are just so clunky. But again, Steve Gadd's performance of it on director's cut is sublime, and it is much better representation of the song on director's cut. Beautiful piece, very sad but beautiful piece. Track 9 is "Constellation of the Heart." And funnily enough, for all my moaning about the 80s sound and the production and whatnot, this song is probably the most guilty of that in terms of sounding 80s. But this was always the song that used to stand out to me. I used to really like "Constellation of the Heart." It's a great contrast to "Top of the City" because obviously that's very melancholy and very, you know, down in the dumps. And "Constellation of the Heart" is very upbeat, funky kind of a rocker. And you know, lyrically it's not too intense. It's just, you know, turn the telescopes around and look at the universe within your soul, kind of a thing, which is quite cool. Yeah, it's a good little tune. I like it. I like it lots. Track 10, we got Big Stripey Lie. This was another song that used to stand out to me a lot more when I first got the album, but it stands out less now. This is probably the closest thing that she came to like the weird experimentation of the early 80s, at least in this era anyways. It almost has an industrial kind of a feel to it. And funny, I just read this a few minutes ago, but Kate actually plays the guitar on there. And it's, it is very, very sloppy and distorted and crazy, and has like an industrial, excuse me. It has an industrial feel, Big Stripey Lie, which is quite cool. And there's also a violin that kind of counterbalances the noisy bit. So it's an interesting song. Lyrically, I've got absolutely no idea. There's lots of theories. A lot of people seem to imply it's about an experience on drugs. Could well be. That would certainly fit the music anyway. But yeah, good song, not the best on the album, and thusly not the best of Kate. But it's good. Track 11, Why Should I Love You? This one has Prince on it. Prince plays keyboards, guitars. He arranged a lot of it, and he sings on it too. He did quite a lot. He had quite a lot to do with it. And I'm not the biggest fan of it. I'm not the biggest fan of it. It's this kind of poppy song. It's got a good hook to it. It's got Prince on it. It's a song. Not the best on the album. I don't have much to say about that one, sorry. It's okay. And the album wraps up with You're the One. Again, quite melancholy. This is a breakup song. I'm assuming in my non-knowledge that probably about Del Palmer and her breakup with him. And it's I wouldn't have chose it to end the album, but it is a good song. It is a nice song, and for a breakup song, it's not intensely what's the word, melancholy, depressing. It's not depressing. It's definitely not depressing, but it's not overbearing. It's not overbearing in its sadness. It is kind of a moving on sort of a song. It's acknowledging that it's not easy to move on, but that in itself is moving on. So yeah, there you go. Interesting album, The Red Shoes. I'm glad that I've been doing these chats, because I haven't listened to this in a very, very long time, and here I was going, oh yeah, well, it's the one that I don't really like that much. But turns out I do like it quite a bit. It is quite good. But the big headline is, half the songs on here are on Director's Cut, and they're way better on Director's Cut. So Director's Cut's probably the album that you're going to want to get. But yeah, that wraps it up for that video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hit a like, hit a subscribe, blah, 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 blah. We'll see you in the future. Take care. For Ariel, that's a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.